being involved in this particular level of writing and what it meant to him. He said, one of the things I'd like to do is to show people how to start positive epidemics of their own. The virtue of an epidemic, after all, is just a little input is enough to get it started, and it can spread very, very quickly. That makes it something of obvious and enormous interest to anyone, from educators trying to reach students, to businesses trying to spread the word about their product, or for that matter, to anyone who is trying to create change with limited resources. Today, the city and county of Honolulu stands at a crossroads between being stuck in the paralysis of the past, the gridlock, and taking assertive, responsible steps towards moving this already magnificent city into the great city of the future that it can become. You all know some of the assets and the benefits that we have and some of the remarkable changes that have occurred to Honolulu in recent times. We are now the 10th largest city in the United States with a population of over 950,000 in 2010. At current growth rates, by 2020, Honolulu will pass the 1 million mark. And 10 years after that, we will pass the 1.1 million mark. Shortly after I left the hallowed halls of criminal prosecution and began in the questionable pursuits of a traditional politician with this mayor job, I think, that I have right now, I suggested to the people who worked with us that what we wanted to try and do is to take every step possible to become a lean, clean, and smart city of the 21st century. Last year, we were named the #1 digital city in the entire United States of America by Digital Communities. In 2011, we were also ranked as one of America's top 3 cities by BusinessWeek.com. Last week, in honor of Earth Day, we were named one of the 25 greenest large cities in the United States. Honolulu is also an international hub to the Asia-Pacific region. It would be difficult not to recognize, after the remarkable success of APEC that came in well under budget and without a single event-related arrest, that we are in the Pacific century. All of us out here have known that. Sometimes people back there in the continental United States on the East Coast don't quite get it. Our tourism numbers have been steady for the past year, which is good news for us, even in this very difficult economic time. There are many positive signs that we're moving forward, and there are also many positive signs for the rail project in terms of the revenues that we've been getting, because they are on target, even considering the difficult financial circumstances the entire world has found itself in. And yet we still have potholes, we still have water main breaks, and we have infrastructure that has suffered from years and years of neglect. We also have, unequivocally, some of the nation's worst traffic. The area from Red Hill to Fort Weaver Road has the second worst congestion in the entire United States, beating out Chicago and New York. Can anybody sort of figure out where we think the worst traffic congestion is in a big city in the United States? LA. It's the intersection of I-40, R405, and 101, right? It's as bad as it can possibly get. I had the pleasure of enjoying that commute myself for a very short period and bailed out of it after basically an hour getting from here to that building over there. And fortunately, there was an escape route, and I took service routes to get up to my alma mater in Westwood. We have it worse than, almost as bad as everybody else, except for that one intersection going from Fort Weaver Road, from Red Hill out to Fort Weaver Road. That is an astonishing fact. It's also completely unacceptable if you're talking about quality of life in the city and county of Honolulu. But it's not just there. We have choke points at every artery coming in. At the H1, H2 interchange, near the Middle Street and the university area on H1, because of our growing population. Stopgap or short measures are not going to make a difference. We are on a path of more cars, more roads, and more traffic congestion. And to add insult to injury, have anybody of you filled up the gasoline tanks in your car anytime recently? It's pretty alarming. There's no reason to think that's going to get any better, which is very frightening, which obviously means we have to move towards alternative energy sources, but ultimately we are going to have to deal with the fact that people are still going to have cars and the prices are going up dramatically. The answer is to tackle each one of these issues deliberately and incrementally. So we are doing so, and progress is being made. In 17 months, we've finished paving over 263 city lane miles, 261 lane miles is ongoing, and 601 lane miles have been awarded contracts or pending. Our Board of Water Supply is under new management. We're building a better future for Oahu. This week, construction of pillars for the City Rail Transit System began in East Kapolei, and with that, an alternative relief is in sight to Leeward residents who now face morning after morning and night after night nothing but brake lights of the cars in front of you. I want to say something that I find very personally offensive in government. People were sent to that area promising that they would have a vital second city. We asked them to move there. We gave them a very great idea, an educational institution in that area so that they could go to school there. We told them that if they went out there, they would have a vibrant second city, and they went out there, they built it, they invested, and other people went there in droves and droves. And just recently, a number of very high-level government officials, or former government officials, said, you know what, we liked it at that time, but you know what, we've changed our minds. And so even though you've been out there, and even though we gave you all of those promises, guess what? You're not going to get a decent transportation system. And by the way, you're stuck out there now, and lots of luck. I find that to be government at its absolute worst. When you have made a promise of that caliber and that level, and then you suddenly sit there and say, oh, never mind, after people's lives have been basically built on the premise that they would be given decent transportation, affordable housing, and the opportunity of growth encouraged by the government, and then to say suddenly, no, we're not going to do that right now, to my mind, it is short-sighted and exceptionally unjust. So if somebody thinks that we should be sitting on the sidelines while people are saying, you know what, West Oahu, University, hey, that's a great idea. Kapolei, it's a great idea. You know, it was terrific at the time, but forget about it now. That's not somebody who's ever going to give an ounce of credence to what government ought to be to the people who we represent. With those pillars, with structures going up in the air within the next several weeks, it is going to essentially be the budding of flower shafts coming out of the urban waste of traffic and the suffocating traffic that those people have out there right now. This is the hope for the future, and it's growing. If you live outside the route, you might think rail does nothing for you. I suggest otherwise. As the population grows, so do personal vehicles. Without significant traffic alternatives for West Side people who will be looking for demand for other places to live. Without a viable solution, we will succumb to the rather common problem of cities ever spreading through suburbia. Rail helps keep the country country. It helps keep East Oahu, East Oahu. It helps preserve a way of life for smaller communities on the North Shore or the Windward Side. Just as you all know, I see rail as a means to an end. It is not a means to an end in itself. The end is to allow areas from Kapolei in the urban core to accommodate our island's expected population growth. The end is to build more pedestrian-friendly, mixed-use neighborhoods. This promotes energy efficiency as residents do more walking to obtain goods and services and use the modern rapid transit system to reach other neighborhoods. The rail system is unequivocally a polarizing issue for many. Concerns and anger have become just as much a headline as unprecedented progress that has been made. People are concerned about unsolved freightas performances, escalated costs due to change orders and lawsuits, whether alternatives were considered, not getting federal money, the project bankrupting the city and county of Honolulu, property taxes skyrocketing, spending this money on something else, and whether it will be unattractive and obstruct views. I recognize that many people and many residents have these questions on the city's ability to answer them transparently and to deliver the project on time and under budget. Given its cost, there is absolutely no doubt that everybody has the right to scrutinize it. The concerns I feel too, but once you know about the concerns, once you know that where we're at, then a lot of these questions should be asked with a countervailing, what is it going to cost us not to build rail at this point? If there's one person who's brought a little bit of money to the city and county of Honolulu and the state of Hawaii, his name is Dan Inouye. I don't think anybody could rationally counter or try and say that that's not a fact. And he has said of the $1.55 billion, what is going to stop that from coming to Honolulu, Hawaii now, considering the position that we're in? And he said the answer to that question is World War III. That's it. That's the only thing that can stop it. It's on the way. He understands it. He can deliver it. You sit there and end up right now letting the naysayers have their way. Piss off $1.55 billion that we can get by the end of this year. You will not see it again for this project, and you will not see it again ever in the future. We have disappointed the federal government in the past. We turn our noses up and away from $1.5 billion now. You will kiss off that for eternity, or at least as long as any of us are alive in this room. So to suggest now that you should be worried about that, to suggest when you have those types of assurances from somebody in that position, certainly the third in line to the presidency, arguably the second most powerful person in the greatest free nation in the world, then you are turning your back on everybody who lives here. And you're turning your back on those people who we gave promises to live, how they could live and their future in West Oahu. There has been far too much focus on technical elements, which we should arguably leave to professionals and not to people who know nothing about rails, and I'm not going to mention any names like Panos. What's going to change everything, and what we really need to start focusing on, is transit-oriented development. Transit leads to that development. We are going to have the opportunity. How much time do I have left? Are you standing there? My time is up. All right? You're just saying, hey, I'm really good at this one. I'll start tapping. Transit-oriented development is going to change everything for the future. If you're talking about what's going to make things better for us for decades and centuries to come, you've got to look beyond the horizon, behind just that line out there that shows that the ocean ends, and know that there's future generations to come. TOD will put increased land values, it will increase opportunities for affordable housing, it will increase commerce, it will increase all of those things, and that is the future of us. And with my time up, I would like to say, I'd really like to stay, but I'm going to get out of here before all of you can pick me up. And frankly, if you have a problem with your personal pothole, go ahead and send it to the city and county by an email, and I'm sure somebody else will get around to it. With that said, thank you very much for letting me show up.
That pretty much sums it up.